What's going on, Cloud Scholars? I hope I found you with good vibes. My name is Kieran Truss, and I am your host. In today's video, I'm going to talk about lifecycle workflows and show you how you set those up. So today's going to be a mixture of what is and how to video. And I'm really excited to talk about the new feature within identity governance. So here we are with the Azure portal, and you can see here there is this lifecycle workflows uh, in preview mode. And if you click on that, here you'll be able to see just the overview pane of the lifecycle workflows. So before we even jump into doing all that, I want to really talk about what this feature is really helping organizations do. So Lifecycle Workflows is a new identity governance service that enables organizations to manage Azure AD users by automating three basic lifecycle processes. Those processes are joiner, mover, leaver, also known as JML. It's very important for you to manage these processes and think of it from the cradle to the grave. This is pretty much how your users get into your organization, what happens during their tenure in your organization, and then finally, how do you go about removing users access and properly making sure that they leave the organization in a safe way that doesn't cause any risk to your organization. So let's talk about joiner. Joiner is when an individual comes into the scope of need and access. An example is a new employee joining a company or organization. So when people join an organization, there are things that you may have to get completed before they start. There are things that you need to get in a line within the organization. You may have some documentation. So all those tasks is where we're talking about with the joiner. It could be pre-hiring task or even something quick like an onboarding task last minute. So that's really what comes down to joiner, and every organization is different. Then we have mover. So with the lifecycle workflows within Azure, it's still a new product. It hasn't matured yet. But what I will say, it really concentrates on the joiner and leaver, doesn't really concentrate on the mover. And when I say mover, let's go to the definition provided by Microsoft. When an individual moves between boundaries within an organization, this movement may require more access or authorization. An example would be a user who was in marketing is now a member of the sales organization. So if someone gets promoted, if someone is moved to another department, all those are scenarios or situations, I should say, of movers. Then finally, we have the lever. Lever is when an individual leaves the scope of needing access. Access may need to be removed. Examples would be an employee who is retiring or an employee who has been terminated. This is when you'll have a lever within your organization. Now, I want to say really quickly, it is very imperative that this step is done completely right. Not partially right, but completely right, because you can run into a compliance risk. You can get fined if you do not do this in the right fashion. If somebody is terminated, trust me, they are not happy about that. So guess what's going to happen next? They will probably do something malicious. Go back into the organization, go back into the network, log in, take some emails, forward some emails, do anything they can to make the company look bad. So it's really imperative that this gets done the correct way. There are times, and I've seen it, where HR doesn't notify IT that somebody is no longer with the company, and they still have access for the next 2 weeks. And then next thing you know, you'll see the person send an email saying, "Hey, I still have access to this. I'm still getting emails. Please disconnect my account." Now, if you run into a user like that, great, because they're that angry with the company, they're just like, "This remove my account, stop sending me emails." But if you have somebody else who has a little bit more IT knowledge, well, you can see exactly where I'm going with that. So let's jump back over to the Azure portal. I feel like I've done enough talking. Let's go in, let's navigate through this screen of the lifecycle workflow and see exactly what we have here. All right, back through the lifecycle workflows. If we come onto the left-hand side, it starts off with the overview pane, where you can just have getting started, and it kind of gives you a little bit of, say choose template and all this other stuff, and then has the overview where this shows you a bunch of different stuff. So let's start off with the overview pane. So there's no alerts to display. One thing I will tell you about workflows is that they're running a schedule. So they run every 3 hours, but there is an option to run them on demand. Then there is schedule enable, so you can have a workflow, but you can say, okay, I don't want it on a schedule. I want to run this whenever I need to run it. So I'll bring up a particular template that might fit the bill for that. Then there's schedule disabled. And then you can see the workflows that are scheduled disabled, and then you have deleted workflows. So over here, if we go to workflows, this is a section where you will see all your workflows. Below that, you have deleted workflows. Think of this as a recycling bin. Anything in here, you can pull back out and restore it. So if you see right here, I have no workflows, but if I wanted to delete it permanently, I can. And if I wanted to restore workflow, I can do that as well. Then there's custom extensions. I'm going to go into that a little bit later. I feel like if I do it now, you may not have full grasp of it. So in order for you to properly digest that information, I want to make sure I go through on the workflows and go through the templates so you have a better understanding. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click create your first workflow. And here you'll see 6 templates. So let's go through the 6 templates. So this is onboard pre-hire employee. This is configure pre-hire task for onboard employees before their first day. So this is all the stuff that needs to get completed. Then there's onboard new hire employee. Configure new hire task for onboarded employees on their first day. So this is, hey, we want them enabled right now. Let's run these tasks, add them to the groups, and do all that other stuff. Then there's real-time employee termination. So one thing I would say about this is they need to get removed from our organization right away. They did something that was malicious or something that we just can't stand for. This person is getting terminated. So this is going to be running just right there and then. This would not fall into what I mentioned before, that whole scheduled run. This would be something that you would set right now. And if you see here, it says on demand. So there's no schedule for this. This is just literally, hey, we're doing it at the moment. Then there's pre-offboarding for an employee. Configure pre-offboarding tasks for employees before their last day of work. So this is, hey, you need to do knowledge transfer. You need to, send an email to this person. You need to show whatever it is. That falls into that bucket. So then there's offboarded employee. This is another lever, right? If you notice, I mentioned before, this said joiner, mover, lever. And I mentioned that they really have stuff more for, everything is pertaining to joiner and lever. There's nothing really for mover right now. So there's another lever which is offboard and employee, configure offboarding tasks for employees on their last day. And then there's another lever which is post offboarding of an employee. So what would fall into the post offboarding employee? This is, hey, they left already. This is after their last day of work. You may need to have their manager do something, like send an email or confirm that equipment was, brought back. I would hope you would have that equipment brought back in the last day, but you just never know. And then there's also maybe, hey, we need to get access to so and so's mailbox. So those are things that happen after somebody leaves, or you may say, let's give them access to the mailbox before the person leaves the organization. But every organization is different. This is not binary. So as I'm teaching, I'm bringing up different scenarios because it's things that I've seen throughout my 16-year career. All right, so let's jump back to the PowerPoint slide because I want to talk about 2 different things right now. All right, so here we are back at the PowerPoint slide, and one of the task templates we're going to go through, I'm going to go through 2 with you, is onboard pre-hire employee. So if you look here, we have our manager, who is James St. Patrick, CFO. Any Power fans will understand why I have him as a CFO. And then we have Hillary Banks, Fresh Prince fans. Hillary Banks is going to be our interim purchasing manager because Hillary likes to swipe her card. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a scope, right? And that scope is going to be purchasing department. And what's going to happen is we're going to say, okay, we're going to enable the account for said user, and then we're going to add to group. Now, as I go through it, it'll make more sense about what's going on here. I just want to kind of talk a little bit about what our plan is for this template. And then the next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to do a real-time employee termination where we remove groups and then we disable the account. So let's jump in and let's get our hands dirty. So back at the portal, what we're going to do is we're going to click on onboard pre-hire employee. And in onboard pre-hire employee, you can change the name of it. So let's just say you say, okay, this is onboard pre-hire employee for marketing because they always have somebody new. Let's leave them with their own template. You could also have onboard pre-hire employee for I don't know, sales. Doesn't really matter, but we're going to keep it simple for this because I like to keep things simple when teaching so you get the foundational understanding. So then this way you can have other videos or you can move on up yourself with the more intricate stuff. So name, description, you could keep the description whatever you want. You can leave it the way it is. We're going to leave it to that. Then we're going to go to trigger details. It says defines the trigger conditions used to determine when the workflow runs for your users. So this you can't modify this. This is grayed out. A little bit below that, it says configure this event timing for onboarding and offboarding users within your organization. So this is days from event. So you can modify the days here, and then it has event timing is before, and you can't modify that, right? Because this is pre-onboarding, so it's before they start. And then event user attribute. This one I want you to pay attention to. So there's two event attributes that you really need to pay attention to, and that's how the joiner and leaver work. So what they're paying attention to is employee hire date and employee leave date time. So those two events, so when it comes to joiner, it's employee hire date. And then when it comes to leaver, it's employee leave date time. So let me go into our Hillary Banks user so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, Cloud Scholar. So we have Hillary Banks here. She's one of our users, but if you notice right now, it says account status is disabled. So if I come into edit properties, or if I go to properties itself, I can see that the employee hire date here is November 22nd, 2022. So that's the employee hire date. So what that whole employee hire date, that's exactly what it's looking for, that specific field, so that it knows, okay, and I'm going to jump back over to it. It knows days from event. So 7 days before the 22nd, it's going to start rolling this task out. And remember, when I said that it's on a task schedule, it runs every 3 hours. So this task schedule is going to say, hey, the lifecycle workflows is going to run and go through all your workflows, and it's going to say, okay, dude, are you set to start running? Are you set to start running? Are you set to start running? And that's the way it goes. It goes through all your workflows, and it's going to see if it's set to start running. And the way it finds out if you're set to start running is by this specific attribute, this employee hire date. So that's how you know where that workflow, that automation comes into account. Now, when it comes to termination, there is nothing there for that, and I'll show you it because it's something that's set on demand. So next we're going to go to next configure scope. And this is what I was referring to in the PowerPoint deck where I said the scope was the purchasing department. So you can add a bunch of different ones. So you can say, so let's start off with this first one. So you could go to property, you could go to department, display name, given name, fax number. There's a whole bunch of different things. And then you can also say account enabled. There's a whole bunch of different things. It's really up to you. It's really how you want to modify it. Then it says operator equals, and what we're going to do here, we're going to change this to purchasing. Then next thing we're going to do is we can add some more stuff here, but we're going to keep this video very simple. So I'm going to leave it to that, and I'm just going to come out of it. Now remember, when it's running those intervals to see if it should run, it's going to look and say, okay, employee hire date, but it's also going to look at this scope right here for the rule for purchasing department. Next, we're going to go to review task. So within review task, there are a couple different tasks that we can set up for this. So the first one right here, generate, tap, and send an email. Now for this environment, I don't have an email associated with any of these user accounts, but I was able to generate email with another environment, and really quickly, just so that you guys can see how the emails come up. So I will show you that later on in this video. So right here, you can say workflow tasks. It says you can use predefined tasks for this template, modify them, or add more tasks to define the set of actions for your custom workflows. So if we go to add task, what we want to add user to groups, and then we want to enable user account. That's what we're doing for this video. But there are a bunch of other different things. And I want you to pay attention to something. For these tasks that are here, there's not a lot, but if you look at the category, it's joiner, leaver, joiner, leaver. Nothing comes up for mover. So they really, for the JML process, they really just focus on J and L, no M. So I'm going to click on add. And you can see I'm getting this exclamation, this warning here, because it's saying, hey, we need more information. So when I click on that, it's going to say, which group are you adding this user to? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in purchasing, click on purchasing, and then click select. And that's fine. So I'm also going to remove this because it's going to error out if I keep this here. And if this errors out, then everything else is shot. It's not going to work. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to do the add users to groups and enable user account. So remember, we were talking about onboarding pre-hire employees, and as that purchasing department, that's the scope. And then those two tasks is this enable account and add to group. So I wanted to jump back to the PowerPoint slide so you can see where we're at with this whole setup process. Okay, so now we're back here. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on review and create. And then we click on create. And it gives us this pretty much everything that we can see here of how we're set up. And then right here is where you enable schedule. So I'm going to click on enable schedule so you all can see how that looks. And this shouldn't take a long time for this workflow to get created. So we could come back to overview, and we see one scheduled, right? And it says workflow scheduled every 3 hours, and there's one scheduled, and we still have nothing disabled or deleted. So let's go to workflows, and we can see when our workflow was created. And if we click on our workflow, we have a couple different things that we can do with this, right? So it says last modified, gives the time. It says category joiner. Next target run is supposed to be 219. See, it's 3 hours, so it's 219. Nothing process user with failures. Is nothing there. So obviously this hasn't run yet. And then we go to properties. You can see the same thing. You can have the different versions of it if you wanted to make changes. It says enabled, scheduled, and then it says enabled. Task preview. It lets us know the task. So if you wanted to modify it, you can add more tasks to it. And then execution conditions. This is just letting you know exactly, hey, right now it's 7 days before the employee hire date. That's the event it's looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the overview, and we're going to click run on demand. So you would click on run on demand. Remember, it's a template. So what we're going to do is we need to add the user to it because we did a scope, which is the purchasing department, but we need to also add the user to it. So let's go back and let's click add user. And we're going to do Hillary Banks because it was only looking at the scope, which is the purchasing department. So if I wait another 3 hours, it's going to say, okay, let's look at the scope of the purchasing department and let's see whose date is 7 days before, and then it's going to run. Right now we're forcing it. So let's go click run workflow, and it's running the workflow. So if we hit refresh, it'll start to populate down here, and look, there it goes. It says in progress. And then you can also click over here to runs, and you'll see what's running. And then you go to task, you can see task as well. So it's still in progress. So let's click on that, and it says to completed. So let's see what it says. So it says, add users to group completed, and then it says enable user account. So let's jump back over and let's look at Hillary Banks to see what's going on. Okay, so we're back at Hillary Banks, and let's see what we have. So we see account status is enabled. So that worked. And if we go to groups, we see she's a part of the purchasing group. So that works for us. So let's go back to our workflows so you can see those two other options I had mentioned before. So here we are back at the workflows. And if I click on this workflow and I click task, I can add some more tasks. And there were two tasks I wanted to bring up because I feel like with joiners, these two tasks are something that you will want to know about. And this is generate tap and send email. And then this is send welcome email. So this generate tap and send email, this is going to go to the user's manager. So it's very important that when you set up the user that you put in that manager field who the manager is. So what Azure is going to do is go to the user within the scope. Then from the scope, it's going to say, okay, it's going to look at the trigger, which is the employee hire date. And once it says, okay, everything is approved, and it's like, okay, you're in this workflow, it's then going to go and say, when it goes through, if you check this option, generate, tap, and send email, it's going to say, okay, let me look. Whose manager is this? Because they need to get their credentials. So let's see exactly what populates for that manager, how that email looks. Okay, so this is how the email would come up. It will say, Hillary will be joining the team soon. Your new team member is scheduled to join the team on Wednesday, the 16th, November 2022. Now, I know I put it to a different date within this environment, but I had already created that at one point and I just changed the date later on. So, but this is basically what the email will show up. So it says, to help make the onboarding process as smooth as possible, we generated a temporary access pass for Hillary to use as their temporary password when signing in. So it's letting you know that is the temporary pass for them to get into. Now, I will let you know that if you do not have that temporary authentication set up within your Azure portal, you will get this error message. Generate, tap, and send email. So in the workflows, when it's letting you know the task that is run, you're going to get this error. Unable to retrieve tap, converge user credential policy does not allow creating or updating this authentication method. So this is an authentication method that needs to be enabled. So I'm going to show you where that is so that this way, if you run into it, you know exactly what you need to do. So here we are back at the Azure portal, and I'm going to click on Azure Active Directory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go to security. And then in security, I'm going to go to authentication methods. And this tap is temporary access pass. I mean, some organizations may not have that enabled. What you're going to see a lot is the Microsoft Authenticator enabled, FIDO certificate based, but some may not have this enabled. If this is not enabled, if you don't have it enabled, you will not be able to do it. So I'm just letting you know that's where you're getting the error message. Once you enable this and then you target all users, or you want to target that specific user, I mean, you probably do all users, right? Then you'll be able to get through with that. So just so you know that. So another thing I wanted to show you is also the welcome email. How does that look? And when I say welcome email, I'm referring back to this one. Send welcome email to new hire. So let's jump to our PowerPoint deck so I can have a screenshot for you. So this is the email that the new user will receive. It says, welcome to the team, Hillary. We're excited to have you join our growing team and look forward to your successful and memorable journey together, so on and so forth. It's pretty, template based welcome email so that this way the new user gets that. So remember, Hillary's title was interim purchasing manager. So what we're going to do is, hey, she's not working out. She's actually spending way too much money. What we're going to do is now work on disabling her account. So here we are. We're back at Lifecycle Workflows. And we see we have scheduled enabled. We have one still enabled here. So we're going to click on Workflows. And we can also do it from up here as well. We can click Create Workflow. And we're going to do real-time employee termination. So remember, what we said we were going to do with real-time termination. Our goal is to make sure that we remove the groups and disable the account. So let's go back to the portal. So I'm going to click on select. And as the same thing with the other one, you can do real-time employee termination. You can change this name if you want. We're not going to. So right here, if you say trigger details, this one says on demand. So before I even go into that one, let me come out of it and let me say offboard and employee pre-offboard, and let's select this one. You see what it is? Days from event. It says employee leave date and time. I don't mean to jump back and forth between the PowerPoint and the Azure portal, but I just want to make sure that you're really digesting this information. These are the two attributes that we really need to pay attention with this joiner leaver process, is employee hire date and employee leave date time. Putting in that information for your specific user will help with the automation. So it's very important that you have that, because that's the triggers that the workflow is going to look at. And when you set up the workflow, it's like, okay, what trigger is it? Is it the employee leave date? And then also you have your specific scopes that you also put in there so that you target the right set of users. So I'm going to come out of this and I'm going to go back to real-time employee termination because we got to get rid of her right now. And trigger type, this is on demand. So there's no schedule. So what we're going to do is review task, and here are the tasks. It says remove user from all groups. That's fine. Remove user from all teams. We don't have any teams associated with ours, so we're going to take that out. And then just delete user account. Now, I worked in IT for a long time. There's no deleting accounts because compliance. Everybody's different. If you want to do that, it's perfectly fine. I'm just here showing you the options, but I'm going to be realistic with this, and I'm going to go to disable user account. And you can see there's more task here for this specific scenario for this workflow. So it is send email after user's last day, send email on user's last day, send email before user's last day. There's all these different tasks, and then there's custom task execution, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Then there's remove all license for user, which is great because sometimes you'll disable the account, but the license is still attached to that user account, and you're costing more money. Then you go back, ask Microsoft for more license. You might buy a batch of 500, 1,000, totally up to your organization. But having that there, because that's one of those little nuances, right, in IT that people just forget. So the workflow, the automation, you're seeing exactly why it's so important and why it helps our organizations. So we're going to click disable user account and click the OK, and then we're going to click next, select the users, and we're going to add Hillary here. She's going bye-bye. And then this way you have your users, and then it's letting you know exactly your users here. And then you click review, and then you click create. So you notice here, enable schedule is not there because it's on demand. And then we're going to click create. So this is good because, sometimes organizations will disable or remove somebody from the organization, or I should say HR will, terminate someone, and they need to get in contact with IT really quickly. Hey, we need to get this account disabled right now, right now, right now. And you may be doing something. You may be on the road driving, or you may be in the basement because that's where your IDF closet is, and you're not getting the best signal. What you can do is with this tool, you can give HR and teach them, give them a license so this way they could get into identity governance and they could run this, and you could set up the template for them. So if something does happen, they have the ability to disable the account. So that's just an option there for you, just in case you're thinking about how you can utilize this within your organization. So I'm going to refresh this, and I see it says completed. So we click here and we say remove user from all groups, disable user account. So let's go back over to this tab. We're going to go to our directory, users, and we're going to go Hillary Banks, and we can see disabled. And then let's go to groups, and we can see it, no group membership. So that worked. That is working perfectly fine for us. So next thing I want to talk a little bit about is just the custom workflows. So over here with the custom workflows, these custom extensions. So this is if you add a custom extension, there are different things that you can work within the workflow templates and task executions. So remember, where we were talking about earlier, we were talking about those attributes, the employee hire date and then employee last day. Those two attributes that we were referring to. This is where you can add custom extensions where you can now set up a logic app within here, so that this way you can get certain custom attributes associated with that, because the Azure Lifecycle Workflows are really looking for those two specific attributes. So if you needed to make changes to that, you would go into here and make those changes, but I want to show you exactly where you need to go and set that up. So if you want to do custom attributes association, so you go to Azure AD Connect, you would manage Azure AD Cloud Sync, and then here, wait for it to load up, you click on it, and then you would go to map attributes, click to edit map attributes. And then here you would make those modifications. So in the documentation, in excuse me, in the documentation for Microsoft, it talks about the extension attribute 1. So I'm going to leave that in the description of this video, just so you can get an understanding of how that setup goes. But for now, this is really why I wanted to cover in this video for you. so you have an understanding of it. And when you go about setting this up, this area over here, you'll probably get this. If it's not set up on your end, you're gonna have to go into your domain controller. You're gonna have to download the agent, run it, and then run it and set up your managed service account so that this way it could communicate back to your cloud. So I'll probably make another video about that section itself. But I just don't want to. This video is actually running a little bit longer than I would like it to. So I'm just going to cut it right here. Please, if you like the content that I provided you in this video, please smash that like and subscribe button. I do take time out of my day to make sure that I'm providing you with, some, helpful resources, right? Some really good information, some insight that I have, and just really helping out and giving back to the community. So as always, here at Cloud Scholars, our goal is to get you from scholar to consultant and from consultant to expert. Thank you and see you next time.